Anime begins in Yokohama City, where an enormous kaiju suddenly appears, so the government sound the alarm ordering the citizens to evacuate. It starts destroying the city, and everyone watches the news as a helicopter starts blasting the monster. But it doesn't do anything, so everyone starts to get worried. But an elite unit known as the 3rd Division arrives to fight the kaiju, and their captain Mina fires laser gun, killing the kaiju with a single shot. Everyone celebrates the victory, thinking the 3rd Division is amazing because they were able to defeat the kaiju without any casualties. A team arrives to clean up the mess, and we meet a man named Hibino. As he collects a sample for the researchers, he sees his teammates lifting one of the kaiju organs, but he warns them to be careful. And it suddenly explodes. The blood burns one of his companions, so he helps the man, telling him he's going to be fine. Hibino realizes that the kaiju is massive, so it's going to take ages for them to remove it, and the supervisor orders him to remove the intestines. He doesn't want to do it because it's a disgusting task, but the supervisor tells him he has no choice, and his colleagues wish him luck, knowing the intestines are filled with the kaiju poop. He throws up upon seeing the intestines, but he knows he needs to do his job, so he cuts through it anyway. Hibino returns home, but he can still smell the kaiju's poop, and he watches the news, realizing that everyone is praising Mina because she has defeated hundreds of kaiju at such a young age. We learned that she's his childhood friend, and he wanted to exterminate kaijus with her, but he's nowhere near her level, so he becomes depressed, wondering how he ended up in his position, but he decides not to think about it, knowing he's helping society by cleaning up the kaiju remains. The next day, he reports to his office, where he meets his new coworker named Reno, but he says that he plans to join the defense force. Another man named Takuda tells him that Kafka used to have the same dream, but he gave up on it, so Reno thinks he's pathetic, asking him why he gave up. But he explains that he did his best, and he still wasn't accepted into the defense force. Reno doesn't want to end up like him, so he mentions that he will never give up, and he leaves the room as Hibino realizes that he sounds like a loser. They return to the kaiju, and Reno is assigned to the intestines, so Hibino celebrates, thinking Reno is about to get what he deserves, but the supervisor tells Hibino to work with Reno. So he becomes upset, wondering why he always gets the dirtiest jobs, but the supervisor notes that he has grit, thinking he would have done well in the defense force if he passed the test. During their break, Hibino realizes that Reno has lost his appetite, so he gives him a vitamin pack, telling him to drink it so he doesn't pass out. Hibino adds that he needs to plug his nose, saying he needs to do it to survive, but he refuses, so he forces him to do it, and they start working together as Hibino helps Reno with his job. Later that day, everyone prepares to go home, but Reno approaches Hibino, thanking him for his help. He can't believe Reno is doing this, and he tells Hibino that it's not too late to join the defense force because they've raised the age limit for applicants. Reno knows he isn't happy with his life because he looked sad when he talked about giving up, and Reno tells him to do whatever he wants, but he thanks Reno for giving him hope, realizing that Reno is a good person. But at that moment, a kaiju suddenly appears, and it's about to eat him. But Hibino grabs him, and they manage to survive. Hibino tells him to escape and call for reinforcements once he's safe, but he refuses to leave, so Hibino reminds him about his dream, saying he can't join the defense force if he doesn't survive, so he runs away, and Hibino calls the kaiju, so it starts chasing after him, trying to eat him. But he enters a building and jumps out a window. In a flashback, we see Mina crying, so Hibino approaches her, trying to cheer her up. She explained me that she's sad because her cat died, and they stare at the ruins of their city as they mention that they're going to join the defense force, but he thinks she doesn't have what it takes, and he tells her that he's going to become a better defense force officer, saying they will exterminate the kaiju together. But we return to the present as the kaiju continues to pursue Kafka, who realizes that he can't escape, so he prepares to fight it, but it crushes his leg, and it's about to eat him. But Reno returns, and he wonders why Reno is doing this, so he explains that he'll never make it in the defense force if he can't even save his colleagues, so Hibino realizes he's pathetic, knowing he can't protect anyone. So he doesn't have what it takes to enter the defense force. The kaiju is about to kill them, but a tiger suddenly stops it as the soldiers open fire. and they blow it to pieces. Mina reports that the target has been destroyed, and she tells her men to follow her, saying they need to check if there are more kaiju in the area. That evening we see Kafka in a hospital realizing that Mina is amazing, and he thinks he'll never reach her level, but Reno knows that he wouldn't be alive if Hibino didn't save him. Thinking Hibino is amazing, so he needs to consider joining the defense force. He thanks Reno for making him feel better, saying he has decided to apply to the defense force. But he suddenly sees a strange creature, which tells him that it's looking for him, and it suddenly dives into his mouth, causing him to struggle. Reno notices this, so he asks Keitha if he okay, but Reno is shocked. When he sees him, Hibino looks in the mirror, realizing he has turned into a monster, so they both panic, but Hibino explains that he still has control over his body, and another patient sees them, so he calls for help, and they know that Hibino is about to get hunted down, so they decide to run away. Episode ends here. We cut to Mina as she thinks about Hibino, who promised her that he's going to stay by her side, but she calls him a liar because she's fighting the kaijus without him. She receives a call, and she learns that a kaiju has appeared in the hospital, so she promises to get rid of it. We return to the hospital, and the old man is terrified, so Reno suggests clearing up the misunderstanding, telling Hibino to smile, but when he tries it, it just causes the man to faint. Hibino rushes to help him, but as he touches the wall, he blows it away, and they are shocked by his strength. The other patients worry about the explosion, and Reno thinks they need to get away. Hibino goes to open the window, but he completely tears it away. He starts freaking out about his body, but Reno says they need to go, so they jump out the window. We see Mina's team on their way, and she receives a report about them leaving the hospital. Meanwhile, Reno wonders how Hibino turned into a kaiju, asking if he's really still the same guy, but Hibino says he doesn't know. As we see, he has taken on more monstrous form. His tongue suddenly launches out and grabs a bird, but Reno finds it disgusting. Hibino returns to his previous form, but notes there's another problem, saying he needs to pee. Reno tells him to hold it in, but Hibino isn't able to control himself, so Reno wonders where the pee will come from, and it comes out of his nipples. Hibino is embarrassed by this, but Reno says they need to keep moving. Hibino wonders if he can still join the defense force like this, but Reno thinks it's impossible because he's become the thing that the force is defending against. Thinking he'll be shot on sight, he becomes devastated, realizing he will never join the defense force, thinking he won't be able to keep his promise with Mina. And there's a report of another kaiju, so Mina splits her team up. Reno notes that there will be less people after him, so he thinks it's the perfect distraction for them to hide. Sight of the explosion, we see a girl crying as her mother appears to be trapped. She isn't strong enough to lift the debris, and the kaiju suddenly appears. It flashes through the building and prepares to eat them, but Hibino suddenly punches it and completely blows it away, shocking himself with his own strength. He checks on the girl, but she's afraid, so he tries smiling again, but it only makes things worse. He's able to free the mother, but the kaiju suddenly returns, so he tells Reno to get away, and he charges up his full strength. He dodges the kaiju attack and delivers a devastating punch, which completely blows it up, causing its blood to rain down on. He says it's over, but the girl is still terrified, so he tells her he will go, but as he starts to walk away, she actually thanks him. He's reminded of when Mina thanked him, remembering his promise to stick with her, so he realizes what he needs to do. Reno tells him they should go before anyone else arrives, but he says he's not giving up, saying he needs to go and stand by Mina's side. We see Mina as she arrives on the scene, wondering what happened. She asks the girl about the kite, but she's scared when she thinks about it. Mina assures her that they will wipe out all the kaiju, but the girl asks her not to hurt the good kaiju, mentioning how there was a good kaiju that saved her mother. 3 months later, we see the cleaning team watching the news and learn that Kafka has been given the code name number 8. Reno thinks things have gotten out of hand, and we learn Kafka was the first kaiju in history to escape the defense force, so they are all looking for him. The supervisor mentions there's mail for him in Hibino, and we see he passed the test for the defense force. He has a look at Hibino letter, and we see that he also passed. Rio rushes to deliver the news to Kafka, but he sees him in his kaiju form, so he kicks him. Kafka quickly changes back, and Reno warns him he's still wanted, so he can't just expose himself. Reno gives him the letter, but wonders why he isn't excited, so Hibino mentions. It's the second round that he normally fails. We learn that the second round is the practical exam, and Reno wonders how he'll hide his body since there will be officers watching, but Hibino says he will take it regardless, and since he's 32, this is his last chance to make it in on the day of the exam. We see them arriving at the Defense Forces Takakawa base. We see other participants arriving, and there's suddenly a girl that calls out to Kafka, calling him old. He freaks out and explains he's only 32, but she tells him his car is in the way. He notes that there are plenty of spots, but the girl mentions that 55 is her lucky number. Hibino thinks about teaching her some manners, but the girl decides to move it herself. She takes off her jacket, revealing a suit, and she lifts their car with only one hand, throwing it to the side. Hibino freaks out about the damage, and Riina wonders who the girl is, so she introduces herself as Kakura Shamiya, mentioning that her favorite hobby is killing kaiju, but she suddenly starts smelling Kafka, saying he smells like a kaiju. Episode 2 ends here.